And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's my great privilege to introduce Jody Williams, the current chair of the Nobel Women's Initiative, which supports and amplifies the efforts of women around the world working for sustainable peace with justice and equality. Ms. Williams is the recipient of the 1997 Nobel Peace Prize laureate for her tireless work in eradicating the landmines left behind in war zones all over the world. Please join me in a warm welcome to the World Peace Conference for Miss Jody Williams.
Thank you. Unfortunately, it is very hard to see you because of those hideous lights right in my face. And I actually like to see the people that I'm talking with. Hi. I have 25 minutes, and people are supposed to yell, "Shut up, Jody," when I'm 5 minutes before the 25. Since I don't speechify with a piece of paper, I can roll for a long time. Thank you to the Rotary for having me here. I generally am interested in things related to peace, but not always, I must be honest. But it's also very personal that I am here, and it has to do with Al Jubitz. Where are you, Al? Stand up, Al. Al invited me to speak at a peace conference some years ago, and when Rotary was looking at working on peace, and that just made me phenomenally happy. And I love Al Jubitz, even though we don't know each other that well. Every time he calls and says, "Jody, will you come talk?" I can't say no to Al. So thank you, Al. I'm going to I'll try to be brief. There are different kinds of peace. Some think peace is just the absence of armed conflict, as we have heard. I don't believe that in the least, and I know that Rotarians don't, because I heard different speakers talking about that. But it isn't enough to think that it is the absence of armed conflict. It is fundamentally necessary, as we have been hearing here, to act. Caring about issues without taking action to change the things that you think are wrong is absolutely irrelevant. It is a complete waste of emotional energy. If you care about something and do nothing, you only disempower yourself. The way to feel empowered about the possibility of a positive future is to join with others to bring about action for change. And it has to be change for everyone, even the people we do not like. Yes. Otherwise, it's like a political party. And I could go on about Trump, but I won't. I promised I'll be good. And I won't curse. My mother thinks it tarnishes my Nobel image. But I must confess, the F word is my favorite. It's a noun, it's a verb, it's an adjective, and an adverb. But think about our own country, and we can think about other countries, but just quickly, look at the politics in this country for now decades, and the increasing polarization, and that's because it's slash and burn politics. It's about, my party won, we're going to do what we want, and the rest of you be damned. That is not a strategy for sustainable peace. It is not a strategy for dialogue. It is not a strategy for seeking the common good. Thus, if you really want to bring about change for the common good, it truly has to be change for everyone. And sometimes that is hard. I do not like many people. I'll be bluntly honest. Just because I got the Peace Prize, I did not become Mother Teresa. Not even close. She's now sainted. I was raised Catholic, but I left the faith. Although I did meet the Pope, and he is one hell of an activist. He's an awesome dude, I have to say. Awesome dude. Just a little story. Some years ago, a bunch of us laureates were in Hiroshima for a peace conference, and I was chatting with one of my close male laureate friends, the Dalai Lama, and we were talking about activism. I think we were like either married or I was his mother in a previous life, because we always joke and kind of slap each other a little bit, gently, of course. But we had been talking about activism over quite a few years. And so when it was His Holiness's turn to talk, he goes up, we're in Hiroshima and there are lots of people around. And he says, I'm a Buddhist monk, which is very obvious. He's wearing that saffron robe and his horrible brown shoes that do not go with the saffron. And he says, I'm a Buddhist monk, obviously. So I meditate. But that's because I'm a Buddhist monk. Meditation will not change this world. The only thing that will change this world is action. He became my favorite action hero at that moment. And I say that because I have been an activist since the Vietnam War. My first protest was in May of 1970. I'm 66 years old. Reasonably well preserved, but you should see my mom at 86. She's hot. She is. My dad was hot too. And then I worked against US military intervention in the Central America region for 11 years. Then I helped create the landmine campaign. And over the years, I have become more and more committed to nonviolent solutions to conflict. And that can only happen, in my view, if we relearn what peace really is. And I think some of you, if you've seen some of my videos on YouTube, I talk about the kumbaya form of peace. That is not peace. Kumbaya, the dove, doves are cool, but kumbaya, the dove, the rainbow, are also ways that the so-called realists who do believe in war, they're symbols that they use to disempower peaceniks, right? To make us feel like, we're tree-hugging liberals, that we wear Birkenstocks and eat granola. Personally, I despise Birkenstocks. I think they are ugly footwear, although they are used prolifically in my state of Vermont. But I think that we need to reclaim what peace is. I no longer talk about peace alone. I talk about sustainable peace with justice and equality. Without justice, without equality, peace is not sustainable. Without all of the elements that have been talked about here by other speakers, of some form of economic equality in this world, which is obscene in the red meat capitalism, which allows handfuls of individuals to have billions of dollars while other people live on $2 a day or less. Some have spoken earlier about the ideological splits, the government's desires for power. Let us not omit global corporate greed. Let us not omit the teachings in MBA programs around this country and the world that the most important thing is how much money you can return to the shareholder. Gone are the days, in many instances, where corporations, companies, businesses were part of the community and recognized their place in the community. If we do not also address globalized corporate greed and power, it will be harder to deal with war, peace, sustainable peace with justice and equality. And I think that's one that people have a very hard time wrapping their head around. Corporations are given, prominence and preeminence in this country. It is no longer we the people, it is we the corporations. We have to tackle those issues head on if we truly want to change the world. And that doesn't mean that corporations are uniformly evil. But did this die because I was talking about corporations? No, 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 no. But I think that part of our peace activism has to be going to university programs and talking about the role of business in society and in the world and what it is doing to the world. I want to especially speak out to the young people because I work a lot with an organization called Peace Jam, which helps young people understand ways to participate in creating peace. So I'm thrilled there are 200 of you here, and I hope I get to see you. Maybe in a breakout session tomorrow. I'm yapping again. But even though we keep saying that we're thrilled that you're here, and we are thrilled you're here, and that you are the hope of the future, that does not absolve us old bats from our responsibility to be active citizens throughout our entire lives. We cannot now step back and say, cool, the young people are here, let them have at it, we've made a mess. We all are responsible for the world we live in and the world we want to live in. I think it was the university president when he spoke who quoted Kennedy talking about, active citizenship and being committed to your country for your whole life. Committed as an active citizen. I would like to take it bigger than that, and in my work, that's what I do. I believe we have to be committed citizens of the world today. It isn't enough. It really isn't enough to say, God bless America. It's a great place, but it's not all that it says it is, as we know, and it's getting worse currently. I'm not going further than that. If we really want global security and global sustainable peace, we have to think as global citizens, not just making our own community good, not just making this country what it says it is and hasn't been, in my view, since the genocide upon which it was born. And we are not, people don't like to hear that, but when the white settlers came here, it was genocide. If that happened in today's world, it would be called exactly what it was. We killed off Native Americans and stole the land, period, genocide. And until we can confront all of the good and bad aspects of the mythology that is any country, it is very hard to face head-on what needs to be done to bring about change. And that needs to be, as the quote that I always mangle, if you do not understand history, you will repeat it, and we see it again. Happening again and again and again and again. With the Obama administration and the Trump administration, and I voted for Obama, but I did not like all his policies, by the way. In his first few months in office, he ordered more drone strikes in areas where we were not at war, which is extrajudicial execution, which is illegal under international law, than W did in all 8 years in office, which is pretty shocking if we think about peace. However, give me Obama anytime. But what we see too is, look at what happened under Obama and the changes, especially near the end, the positive environmental changes, because it was not bipartisan. Look at where we're at now. We have to learn to work together. And one of the speakers said earlier, are we at Shut Up, Jody, yet? How close? Ooh.
Keep talking, Jody.
Okay. we have to learn to speak to each other. And I say that with trepidation because somebody asked me recently if I were invited to the White House, would I go? I said I'd kill myself first. I'm not going to lie, but I will. I'm not going to lie. Lying is bad. Lying bad. Bad. I went to confession as a child that traumatized me for my entire life. But I do think that it is important to talk to people who did vote for the other side, whichever side one voted for, to understand the base reasons. And I don't mean base as in bad, as in voting for Donald. I mean, what were the fundamental needs that you thought your candidate was going to address? And if we don't understand that, how can we change our own country, which many in the world see as, an important leader, diminishing under Mr. Trump because he doesn't have a foreign policy, which is terrifying to everybody. But we need to, as active citizens of our country and the world, we need to make decisions about how we're going to act to change things. My view would be if you're in a candidate's running for office, you go to his on his campaign trail, the speeches. You can see I never go. If you go to those, though, and they start trashing the other person instead of talking about their plans for the future, get up and walk out. We're partly responsible for what we are seeing because we take no action to make it different. The only way to change these people is to get up and walk out on either side. I don't care if it's Hillary or Donald or any of the others who ran. If they're talking trash, instead of talking positively about their own program, leave. I believe in leaving. It makes a very big statement. I will now switch to the young people again. I think people also think the world is such a mess that it's impossible to contribute to change. Not so. I'm a pessimistic optimist. No, I'm an optimist. Wait, what am I? Let me think. I'm confused. I'm an optimistic pessimist. I do believe the world sucks at the moment, and many times throughout my life. However, I know change is possible because I have lived it, especially with the landmine campaign, where we started with 2 NGOs, staff of 1, moi, and we grew to 1,300 NGOs around the world, partnered with good people in governments around the world who believed what we did, that landmines should be banned, and we changed the world. It can happen. Don't waste my minutes on clapping. But I say that to say that no one person changes the world. It happens because we join forces with people who share a similar vision on whatever issue it is that you care about. It is impossible to fix everything. Sometimes I think people are like, oh, well, if I can't create peace tomorrow, it's pointless. That is wrong thinking. If you pick an issue that you care about so much that you can't not do something about it, it burns in your guts and brings up your righteous indignation at whatever the injustice is that grabs your heart and soul, and you join with people working on that issue, you will contribute to peace. Imagine if every single person found that issue and volunteered a few hours a week with a group working on it. Imagine this world. When we created the landmine campaign, we didn't think we were going to create world peace overnight, for God's sake. But we knew that if we could accomplish something with the campaign, we would at least be helping victims around the world. We would be bringing awareness to militaries that they were no longer going to get a blank check about whatever weapons they wanted to use to kill people, mostly civilians, today. It is doable. I started out as a volunteer. February of 1981, I was a full-time teacher. I was walking to a metro stop in DC on my way home to Virginia, and a scruffy hippie type person shoved a mimeographed pamphlet in my chest, so I had to take it. Only us old people know what a mimeograph is. The ink would rub off on your hand. And I'm looking at the red ink on my hand, and I'm feeling a little pissed off. And I was going to throw it away when I got near a wastebasket. But then I looked, and it said El Salvador, 5 minutes? You getting ready for the 5-minute sign there? Okay. El Salvador, another Vietnam. Because of Vietnam and my first protest, I was like, what? What does El Salvador in Central America have to do with Vietnam? And I was so freaked out that I decided to go to the meeting in the church basement announced a week hence. I hate meetings in church basements. I'm an introvert, especially, that does not mean you cannot speak in public, especially going where you don't know anybody, and I figured it'd be like 12 hippies. And it was 12 hippies. So I took the folding chair nearest the door so that I could flee if it was ridiculous. But then I listened to this young man from El Salvador talking about what was being done in our name to kill the people of El Salvador and keep a dictatorship in place. They passed around a volunteer sheet at the end. I signed up, and the rest is history. I got the Nobel Prize, and my parents got off my back.